CPAs. My name is Michelle Moshe, and I want to welcome you guys to the audit exam. We're going to kick off this unit by talking about professional standards. So this is a very high-level overview just to give you an idea about some of the standards that are tested on the audit exam. So here we go. Let's start by talking about audits because it is Hey future CPAs, my name is Michelle Moshe, and I want to welcome you guys to the audit exam. We're going to kick off this unit by talking about professional standards. So this is a very high-level overview just to give you an idea about some of the standards that are tested on the audit exam. So here we go. Let's start by talking about audits because it is the audit exam. So when we talk about audits, we need to know what type of client it is. Are we talking about a non-issuer? So those are your private companies. So such as those mom and pop shops in town. So when an auditor is auditing a non-issuer, they can look to Statement on Auditing Standards for their guidance. What about audits of issuers? So those are your public companies that file with the SEC. For them, the auditor is going to look towards Public Company Oversight Board, often referred to as PCAuB, and they're going to look towards the PCAuB auditing standards. What about audits for government organizations, programs, activities, or entities that receive governmental funds? Well, those audits are going to follow generally accepted government auditing standards. Now, just to give you an overview, the first 4 units of audit are going to be focusing on audits. And specifically, we're going to be focusing on audits for non-issuers and for issuers. And audits are on historical financial information. So we're going to be looking at things that have happened in the past. Now, it is called the Audit and Attestation Exam. That's right. CPAs can issue reports not only on audits of historical financial statements, but they can also issue reports on items other than historical financial statements. So, for example, a client may ask the CPA to examine their financial forecast, which is a financial statement based on the expected financial results of a future period. A CPA can perform this service, and they would follow Statement on Standards for Attestation engagements. So Statement on Standards for Attestation engagements includes 3 types of engagements, which are examinations, reviews, and agreed upon procedures. And these types of engagements are on subject matters other than historical financial statements. You're going to learn way more about Statement on Standards for Attestation engagements in A5. Now, the CPA exam also tests Statements on Standards for Accounting and Review Services. These engagements apply to non-issuers, but to unaudited financial statements. So sometimes there's a client where they just want you to create their financial statements, or they want you to give a little bit of assurance, but they don't want you to give a reasonable level of assurance. And we're going to talk about those different levels of assurance. And in that case, these Statements on Standards for Accounting and Review Services apply. SARS engagements include 3 types of engagements, which are preparations, compilations, and reviews. You're going to learn way more about these in A6. In addition to learning about the professional standards that apply directly to engagements, you also are going to learn about professional guidelines. One of those guidelines that you're going to learn about is the AICPA Code of Professional Conduct. This is covered in A6. The AICPA Code of Professional Conduct is like the ethical backbone of the profession. It tells members how they are expected to conduct themselves. It also reassures the public that CPAs aren't just following technical rules, but we also are held to a very high ethical standard. In addition, in A2, we'll be covering Statement on Quality Management Standards. These are standards that apply at the firm level, so not just to individual CPAs or to an individual engagement, it applies at the firm level. And these standards give guidance on how to build a system of quality management. So this is going to give guidance on how firms should create their policies and procedures to make sure that their work complies with professional and legal requirements and that the reports that they issue are reliable. Before I go, I want to talk a little bit about study strategies for audit and how to study for audit. So you might find that studying for audit, it's different than any of the other exams, especially FAR and Reg. Why is that? Well, there's a couple of reasons. Audit is mostly conceptual with few calculation type questions, but you can use that to your advantage. Studying means that now you can often listen while walking or commuting or even cooking dinner. And you can also work multiple choice questions anywhere, since often you don't have that multi-step formula where you have to follow along and you have to solve and have a pen and paper or spreadsheet tool. Audit is more conceptual, so the multiple choice questions are easier to work on the go. Unlike FAR and Reg, where some topics are covered completely in just a few pages, the entire audit process is covered over 4 entire units. So when you are going through your multiple choice questions, when you're going through your task-based simulations, some of the incorrect answer choices are going to come from other units. What does that mean to you for studying? As you move through the material, as you gain more knowledge about the audit process, you are going to be able to unlock the strategy of process of elimination. So in other words, you don't have to be an expert to move on to the next section. And the good news is that when you come back to review, you are going to find the questions are so much easier because you have that full picture. Now, I want to talk about the audit lectures as well, because they're a bit different too. I designed these lectures so you can simply follow the video and the slides, but I have found that a lot of students prefer to follow along with the book and the concept video, and that works too. If you like to follow along with the book and the concept video, so you're following the book rather than the slides, here's a quick heads up of items you'll find in the concept videos, but not in the textbook. So the first one is study guides. So how do you identify that slide is a study guide? It's going to be a slide that's not in the textbook, and it's going to summarize several key points. These are my own summaries of key points. It's kind of like a shortcut to the essentials that you need to know. I recommend printing those guides out, keeping them nearby during your first pass through the material. They are perfect for quick referencing. But once you move to the review stage, then I recommend trying to commit those to memory. I've also added in visuals. So audit is quite wordy, very few numbers. So I've added a ton of visuals to bring this book to life. And you'll find a lot of those in Unit 4 when we cover transaction cycles. And you don't have to print those. They are just there to aid in your understanding process. In addition, you'll find a lot of real-life examples in the concept videos. I'm bringing these real-life examples to make sure that what you're hearing is relatable. Don't have to take notes on those, but it should help the topic stick better. Exam tips. Sprinkled throughout the lectures, I have exam tips. So I've studied the released exam questions, and I've noticed some clever patterns the examiners like to use to trip our students up. So I'm going to point those out to you as we go, and I'm going to share strategies along the way on how to narrow your answer choices so you feel ready for anything on test day. So all this to say that you've got this, and you have a huge support group cheering you on. Auditing is going to get easier as you keep moving through the material. So again, if some of the multiple choice questions are like, I couldn't narrow it down, just keep moving as it's going to come together all near the end. So let's go ahead and get back to this audit material. So that's a very high level summary of the professional standards that are tested on this audit and attestation exam. You don't need to memorize it just yet, but we're going to be going through these throughout the textbook. So we just wanted to have one spot where you could reference all those standards. Multiple choice question and simulation questions. However, if you decide you'd rather complete it after each video or after every 2 modules or whatever it may be, definitely do what's best for you. But in any case, we have another video coming up for this module. Hey, future CPAs, let's continue our discussion by talking about the nature